Today we're going to talk about something a little bit more technical per se. I'm going to drop some scientific terms, some of which may be new to you. I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible so you can really feel like you have a grasp on what we call the gut-brain axis. This is the kind of hot topic. So there's a lot of discussion about gut-brain in medicine, gastroenterology, psychiatry. This is like the topic. It permeates all disciplines per se, and it's obviously very relevant to the field of nutrition because a lot of what goes on the gut is a direct result of what we eat. Now, I do want to say before we get started that a lot of what goes on the gut isn't necessarily a byproduct of what we eat. So for example, people's exposure to antibiotics early on in life matter, whether or not someone was vaginally delivered or had a C-section matters. Certain environmental factors matter. So gut is linked to nutrition, but there's a lot more to it than that. But as a nutritionist, it's my, fortune and opportunity to get to move in on the gut-brain axis, right? So there's a couple terms I want to throw out there. If anyone wants to follow this stuff in more detail, one term that I have a search follow on, you can do this, by the way. You can go on Google and set up a search where you're following a term. You can also do it in PubMed, which is the database for a lot of the medical scientific literature. I have set up a lot of different searches. So when a new article comes out related to Elizabeth is here, I see Shelby's here, so many awesome people, Chris, Jess, thank you all for joining. If you really want to learn about a topic, you can set up an ongoing search term. So for example, if you set up in PubMed or Medline, which is one of the main databases I use, I have terms like nutritional psychiatry set up. I have terms like gut-brain axis set up. So whenever a new publication comes out that has those language in the title or in the abstract per se, I'll get an alert every week that will keep me abreast of the latest scientific findings. So that's my first recommendation for today. If you want to stay on the cutting edge of new information, you're going to want to set up some kind of an alert. That's what it's called. It's an alert. You can do it through, like I said, Google or the other different databases. I have so many alerts set up, and that every Saturday morning I get 25 emails from different search terms, whether it be related to childhood adversity, gut brain, whether it be related to other nutrition stuff that I'm into, food addiction, eating disorders, etc. So that's a really good way to stay on top of stuff. Another recommendation that I'll make about staying on top of stuff is if you find a journal that you really like, you can set up an alert to where the journal will send you an email every time they have a new either issue or even a new article. So, I have a couple journals that I really like: nutritional neuroscience, biological psychiatry. I got it set up to where whenever they release new data, new publications, I get an email, right? So it's a full-time job staying abreast of the scientific literature. And because I read so much, what I'm setting out to do is to come out here with you and share every week for about 25-30 minutes. And then, we can do some questions toward the end. I used my computer last week. I'm on my phone this week, so I feel like I have less functionality, but we're going to make this work. We're just going to make it work. And your little thumbs up, your little waves, they're all highly appreciated, highly acknowledged. If you like what you get on Friday from 4 to 4:30, just tell someone about it. Have them join the live so that they can learn cutting edge stuff. So I ain't coming at you with no 2012 stuff. I'm hitting you with that 2020 stuff all year long. That new, okay? The latest science. Now, this area that I'm going to be talking about today is a rapidly moving field. So it's rapidly developing, which means some of the stuff that I thought was true in 2016 is a little bit less relevant today. So it's critical to stay on the cutting edge in terms of new science related to the gut-brain axis. A couple things before I dive in. I do want to say that I'm a master's level registered dietitian. I'm the founder of Nutrition and Recovery. We do nutrition for mental and behavioral health here in West LA. And I'm a PhD student in the School of Public Health at UCLA. So I'm half clinical, half research, and I love being able to bridge the gap between those two areas. Gut-brain connection has been around for a while. Okay, there's a commonly cited Hippocrates quote that all disease begins in the gut. Many people have heard that, right? So this is not something brand new per se. There's been little sayings that we've known for a long time. Maybe you've said them, maybe you've heard them. Trust your gut, right? Like people have known that there's intelligence in the gut. We just haven't really understood the mechanisms, okay? The actual mechanisms linking the gut to the brain and to the other areas of the body. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, the specific mechanisms linking the gut and the brain. Maybe you've heard the term butterflies in your stomach, or maybe you've had them recently. Sometimes that's a really good thing. Some people might not love that feeling, but I particularly can appreciate it. It means that there's something going on, right? We call the gut-brain axis, it's important. We often call the gut the second brain, okay? I don't know if you've heard that term, but the reason that scientists are able to determine that the gut is a whole nother organ is because there's about 3 to 5 pounds of bacteria that live inside of the gut, okay? That's gonna be one of the areas that we're gonna talk about today. So I'm gonna cover 3 mechanisms. The first one is the microbiome. The second one is inflammation, okay? I'm really interested in inflammation. The third mechanism or pathway is gonna be the vagus nerve, okay? So I do wanna say that there's other mechanisms and other pathways that we're not going to get into today just for time. One of them that I'm not covering is the HPA axis. That's a hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And the reason I'm not covering it is because I want to cover that on its own, maybe in a few weeks or a month. It's the kind of stress response in the human system. It's super, super important as part of the gut-brain axis. So I see more friends coming in. Yes, so glad you're here. We're going to do this every Friday from 4 to 4:30. In epidemiology, and by the way, epidemiology is the study of disease, disease distribution. So if you're aware, you know, the COVID-19 is an infectious disease, and that is being researched by epidemiologists, how the disease spreads per se. But there's other forms of epidemiology as well. Non-infectious disease epidemiology, often termed social epidemiology, which is something that I study. For example, as an epidemiologist, I'm interested in the link between early life adversity, so child abuse, sexual abuse, and later life outcomes. So, you know, my areas of interest are eating disorders, other food-related pathology per se, and that would be considered epidemiology as well. So epi is a really interesting area of public health that I am a part of. People are sending a request to be in the live video, and I don't know what that means just yet because I'm so new to this. So I will figure that out and learn all the tricks because I got some more learning to do. I'm just so glad you guys are here. So many people that I know, love, and respect. So in epidemiology, there's been links between functional gastrointestinal disorders and mental health issues. So people that have gut stuff have higher levels of anxiety and depression. Okay, that's been around for a while. People that have mental health issues have often impaired GI function. So there's been links in the scientific literature between gut stuff and brain stuff. We've had these sayings. We have Hippocrates telling us a long time ago, all disease begins in the gut. There's been alternative practitioners that have focused a lot on gut health. But like I said, we're starting to really understand the hows and the whys of it all. If you've heard the term psychosomatic, it's an interesting term that describes kind of links between the mind and the body. It maybe refers to certain conditions that might be caused by a mental factor, such as stress or internal conflict. Psychosomatic, sometimes, people use it in the context of like, it's not really real or it's all in your head. But that's not exactly what it means. There's actually a really good journal called Psychosomatic Medicine. This is the kind of stuff that I read. So here's the piece. So many people have gut issues today, and so many of it is unexplained. People don't know why there's something going on with the gut. And, like I said in the beginning, part of it's nutrition, part of it's stress. Guess what? Stress changes the gut. Do I really fully understand that? Not yet, but I am on my way to making a better comprehensive picture of the stress microbiome connection. So the first pathway we're talking about is the microbiome. That term describes the collective genomes of microbes that live inside of our GI tract. Like I said, estimates are somewhere between 2 and 5 pounds of microbes. Now there's microbes in our gut, but there's also microbes everywhere. So they're all over my face as we speak. They are invisible. I see stress changes everything. Yes, indeed. I'm so interested in stress, the human stress response. Stress changes our bacteria. Isn't that fascinating? So more on that to come. I'm trying to, find out what the latest science is suggesting. But I will say that these things are somewhat hard to study. In other words, if you want to study the microbiome, you need to have certain technology that's very expensive, and so you need to be funded, right? So there's this shotgun technology, 16S RNA, where you can take a sample of, typically feces and put it in a machine, and it'll extract the genetic material, which is how you can map out someone's microbiome per se. Who here has done a microbiome test? I want to know. Put a thumbs up or put a wave if you've tested your gut bacteria. I assume someone in the room has. Now, I'll say I've done it several times. I recently did another one, and I was thinking maybe a fun live would be one week if I kind of went over the results. What does it mean, right? When you get your bacteria tested, how do we interpret some of these results? I found that to be worthwhile. I'm shocked I didn't see any fingers or hands. No one's got a microbiome test. Well, you can do it. Marcos, thank you. Couple people. Keiko, right on. It's not that informative on a single test, but if you do repeated tests, you can track some trends over time. So maybe I'll share some of my recent results with you. They're not as great as I hoped. Let's just be real. I'm a dietitian. I'm 13 years sober. I would have the most pop-in micros, but nah. My early life stuff, I'm a product of the junk food era in the 80s, right? Like drugs and alcohol for many years. My microbiome is not ideal. However, there are some really good strengths that I have as a result of eating in a gut-friendly way for many years. So the microbes that live inside of us have various roles, and there's many that are kind of starting to emerge as being more than we imagine. Now I'm going to talk about two main roles. The first one is neurotransmitter production. This was the big finding in the last 5 to 7 years that really changed the understanding of the link between nutrition and mental health and the gut-brain axis. The findings that have been highly cited are that 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut. This is really highly disseminated information that people are referring to often. About 50% of dopamine has an intestinal source. There's another important neurotransmitter called Gaba that reduces anxiety that has, can be traced back to microbes. But there's some controversy around it because just because something is produced in the gut, it doesn't mean that it's active in the brain per se. For example, a bunch of serotonin is being made in the gut, but it doesn't mean it's the same serotonin that's working at a receptor in the brain per se. However, we do know that a lot of depressive symptoms that people have doesn't fall under the classic serotonin theory, right? Which is a lot of antidepressants use SSRIs to treat depressive symptoms, but a lot of times this can stem from the gut, which we'll talk a little bit more about today. So neurotransmitters are produced by bacteria and converted from amino acids. So amino acids are in proteins. We'll talk more about the test. I see some people asking about the test, and I'm happy to be helpful. When we eat a protein that has amino acids, that gets converted by bacteria into neurotransmitters. Now, the role of those neurotransmitters in terms of what they actually do for mental health is still to be determined. We know that the serotonin can be found in the bloodstream, but what does it do in terms of the brain is, like I said, still unknown. We are going to learn a lot more about the blood-brain barrier. So we're starting to learn about the gut barrier, okay? Gastrointestinal impermeability. We're learning a lot more about the blood-brain barrier, right? There's a barrier that prevents things from getting in. So there's some evidence that the amino acids, some of them can pass and then be converted to neurotransmitters, but what about the neurotransmitters produced in the gut? What does it all mean? Or how does the enteric nervous system, which we'll talk about for in a minute, which is the nervous system linked to connecting the gut to the brain as part of the vagus nerve, can that detect serotonin or other neurotransmitters and that be part of the signaling pathways per se? So neurotransmitters is something we do need to know more about. There's tests out there that can test your neurotransmitter metabolism in your urine. I did one at one point because I've just done all the tests. I wanted to know, like, what does this mean? It's been criticized. It doesn't have enough kind of robust scientific merit to be a sound test. But there are people that are trying to test for urine metabolites of neurotransmitters to learn more. The problem with the brain is that we usually can't cut open people's brains. So a lot of our data is limited to animal models, okay? So a lot of what we know about the gut-brain axis comes from mouse and rat or rodent studies, but there's a lot of good human data. So neurotransmitter production is one, and that comes from amino acids. The one that I'm more interested in is the degradation of fiber by the microbes, in which converts into short-chain fatty acids. Now there's three main short-chain fatty acids. We have acetate, propionate, and butyrate, okay? And these short-chain fatty acids have a ton of different roles that we're only starting to understand. For example, butyrate, which is the most probably common or popular one, has potent anti-inflammatory properties in the colon, right? So they did some study where they actually bathed the colon with butyrate and inflammation went down. There's butyrate supplements that have now hit the market in the last year, and you can actually consume butyrate and potentially get some benefits. Now it goes back to this question, is just because you drink the butyrate, it doesn't mean that it stays butyrate all the way until it gets to your colon. Of course, like I said, I try everything. I did a round of the butyrate supplementation. I didn't necessarily feel a huge change because I don't think I have deficiencies there. I eat a ton of fiber, so I don't think I have a butyrate deficiency, but I did do it with a client or two, and they sensed some improvement. So butyrate supplementation does exist. Like I said, it inhibits inflammation. It can be converted to hormones or hormone-like substances like GLP-1, which are things that can affect satiety. So just think about this for a second. You eat fibrous foods, the microbes break down the fiber and the amino acids and convert it to other things, and those things enter the bloodstream and they become signaling mechanisms for the brain. Okay, so this is the gut-brain axis, one of the pathways. I see someone throwing up the fiber gang. If you follow my stories, you see I hit up the fiber gang every once in a while because I'm part of the 40+ crew. We get 40 grams a day from fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. I'm telling you, fiber is the future for mental health. A lot of people don't get enough. The average American diet gets like 15 grams, sometimes even less. So yes, I see some people clapping and acknowledging. Shelby, Elizabeth, Whitney's in the house. Fiber gang. If you want to be a part of the crew, you know, it's all inclusive. It's broad, roomy. Anyone who wants to be in the fiber gang can be in the fiber gang. You just got to get down with the plants. And the best way to get it is from whole grains and beans. So the fiber that's in real food, and by the way, I'm just giving you all the tips. I'm not holding back at all. Soluble fiber is actually more preferred by some of the beneficial microbes. Someone's asking about fiber supplements. Not a big fan. I don't think that fiber supplements are sufficient. I see the smiles from the people that I love. I do recommend chia seed water. This is chia seeds and basil seeds in a drink, and I drink it every single day. It's a way to get a lot more soluble fiber. Soluble fiber seems to be the preferred type of fiber for the degradation and conversion into some of the things that we're looking to get from food. That doesn't mean insoluble fiber is not something that you want to eat a lot of, because you absolutely do. However, most people don't get enough soluble fiber, so that's really, really important. I'm going to talk about a second pathway, which is, yes, this is my magic juice, right? This is the thing. I've been doing it for 10 years, so it's safe. The next pathway we're going to talk about is, if you can't do chia water, just eat more beans, right? Eat a cup of beans every single day, and your body will get used to it. So to recap the last kind of mechanism, probiotics, which a lot of people take, are bacteria. And the bacteria we want in our gut. There's a lot of beneficial microbes that are no longer populating to the extent that we want them to. So sometimes you have to take a probiotic supplement. A prebiotic is the fiber that is in food. So there's certain foods that have more prebiotic properties. You could easily search prebiotics and get a list of onions and leeks and chicory and banana and other things like that on the internet. But all essentially fibers that come from food have prebiotic properties, okay? Soluble fiber means that it dissolves in water. So if you think about chia seeds, become more soluble. In other words, they slow down gastrointestinal transit per se, whereas insoluble fibers doesn't dissolve in water and has the more kind of fecal movement effect per se. So I don't think you should take prebiotic supplements necessarily if you're part of the fiber gang. If you get the 40 grams a day, you don't need to. Some people, I use it with them to transition them up to a higher fiber count. But we take probiotics oftentimes. We eat a lot of fiber, which is prebiotics, and then there's a conversion process where the bacteria break it all down and convert it into other things, which we're now calling postbiotics. Woo-hoo-hoo, that's hot, right? Prebiotics and then postbiotics. It's the conversion process. So these are the neurotransmitters and the short-chain fatty acids and some of the other compounds that we're not talking about today. So second mechanism is inflammation. Now I want to be really clear that there's a difference between acute inflammation and chronic inflammation. Acute inflammation is like if you cut yourself and you get a scab. You'll see like there's an inflammatory process, literally. Chronic inflammation is more like something more subtle per se. Is psyllium husk a good form of fiber? I don't love it. I don't love those fiber supplements. I really, really don't. In other words, I feel like they're sort of inert. I'll make another point and then I'll get back into inflammation. The microbes that live inside of us don't just like fiber, they like fiber and polyphenols. Polyphenols are antioxidant compounds that are found in foods. So if you think about fruits and vegetables, they're filled with antioxidants in the form of polyphenols. So if you get fiber with no polyphenols, it's not the same as getting fiber that's in a food matrix that has a lot of polyphenolic compounds. So there's a synergy between fiber and polyphenols that happens in the gut. I see David's here, good fam in the house. So yes, getting it from food is always the better way, but supplements can be helpful in the transition period. So when you think about severe inflammation, you think about, inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's. There's a lot of conditions where you have serious inflammation going on in the gut. What we're going to be talking about today is low-grade systemic inflammation. So not necessarily inflammation that one would even know is happening. Most people have heard the term leaky gut. Leaky gut describes low levels of intestinal permeability. So essentially, people think leaky and you think like food's leaking through. It's not food. It's like the smallest amount of permeability to where a particle of a bacteria might seep through. Or LPS, lipopolysaccharide, is a common thing that gets leaked through. What ends up happening if your gut barrier is compromised is you have small little particles that aren't supposed to be in your blood entering your blood, and then your immune system is reacting to that, okay? So you end up getting a chronic immune response where you're constantly working to fix a problem that shouldn't necessarily be there in the first place. Now, just to make clear, I've got a question. What if you take polyphenols without fiber? I don't recommend antioxidant supplements. I really recommend getting them from just a ton of plants. Polyphenols are just in plants. And if you eat a ton of plants, you get them with fiber. So to take polyphenols without fiber would be in the supplement form. I'm a little on the fence about that. I know some people do it. I know there's some evidence to support it. I don't always recommend it because I'm more of a food-based dietitian. And I don't know that they need to be at the same exact moment. I just know that bacteria like both fiber and polyphenols. They like other stuff too that you wouldn't expect them to like artificial sweeteners. And I don't mean all bacteria like these, certain strains like them. So you end up growing the strains that you want when you eat more fiber and more polyphenols. But if you're eating low fiber or drinking diet sodas and things like that, you can end up growing strains of bacteria that you don't necessarily want. I have a theory, and other people do as well, that if you overgrow certain strains of bacteria, they can influence our behavior. And if you think about like the Diet Coke addicts of the world, like what makes it so addicting? Is it just the caffeine, or is it the artificial sweeteners, the combination? Or if someone drinks something so regularly, is it possible, and this is just theory, that bacteria can be part of the craving cascade? And this is an area of interest that I have. We know that craving is hard to understand fully. Is it possible that we could be just like hosts, and the bacteria are puppet masters in some sense? That scares people, but it's a fun thing I want to throw in because I think there'll be more research on that in the future. Yes, I'm seeing joins and I'm seeing acknowledgements. So stress, like I said, can affect leakiness of the gut. We know that drugs and alcohol can. So a lot of people that I work with have a history of drugs and alcohol, and that really can impair the gut. We know alcohol can really affect gut function. If you think about it, alcoholic liver disease doesn't come directly from ethanol. It comes from the effect of ethanol on the gut, which makes the gut leaky, and then the leakiness causes bacterial translocation to the liver. And so it's the problems of the gut that lead to liver disease in alcoholism. So that's just one pathway. A lot of medications can mess up the gut. There's been a lot of data that's coming out of the Ireland group in the last couple years that have shown a lot of antidepressants and other medications that people take for a long time can lead to intestinal permeability. I see more friends are joining. Sydney, thank you all. I see the question, can leaky gut be reversed with abstinence? There isn't a lot of research, but I seen one study from the Belgian group that I love. They showed that alcoholics, a lot of them still had leaky gut 3 weeks into their abstinence, and that those with higher gut leakiness had higher levels of anxiety and depression. And this makes total sense based on what we're saying. If someone's gut is leaky, they have low-grade systemic inflammation. The immune system is working really, really hard. And what you end up with is a lot of inflammatory markers that are increased. Now, markers are just markers. What they mean is that there's activity going on. There's another term that I have a search, an alert set up for. It's the term inflammasome. It's a pretty new term because we're learning all these new inflammatory markers that exist. There's tons of them. There's so many inflammatory markers that research can use to learn more about inflammation. The ones that are most well understood are C-reactive protein. I see the question, do SSRIs create leaky gut? I didn't want to get too specific because I don't like to bum people out, but the research that has shown gut issues have been on SSRIs. And so there's been a conversation, like if you give someone with depression an SSRI and they don't have a serotonin problem, maybe you can be causing more problems. Now, I'm not antidepressants. That's a double negative. I think they're very, very helpful, but there's a lot of people that don't respond to them. Okay, so they call it treatment-resistant depression. What if the depression wasn't an SSRI, wasn't about the serotonin receptor? What if it was, and this is the big question that we're posing today, what if it really was low-grade systemic inflammation that was starting in the gut, that was accumulating over time, passing through the bloodstream, and eventually crossing the blood-brain barrier and causing inflammation in parts of the brain? This is called Neuro Inflammation. This is another search term that I have set up for myself so I can follow Neuro Inflammation. So one family of inflammatory markers is called cytokines. Cytokines covers a lot of different families. You may have heard of interleukin 6, right? We have evidence that certain cytokines can cross the blood-brain barrier. So if someone has leaky gut and they have chronic low-grade inflammation, that can eventually cross the blood-brain barrier and affect mental health. So yes, we now know some of the more pronounced mechanisms. Do we know everything about the blood-brain barrier? No. But the study of neuroinflammation is likely to elucidate more, and I am following closely so that I can optimize my clinical care as well as share this information with you all. I'm going to move to the last mechanism, and I see more friends joining. I'm so happy that you guys are here. I get passionate about sharing this stuff. I'm going to do one more mechanism. And again, I don't know what it means to be in the live video, but I promise I'll figure out so that I can get that straightened out for the next week. The last one is the vagus nerve. You hear what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. The vagus, that's not true for the vagus nerve. What happens with the vagus nerve does not stay with the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a communication mechanism throughout the body, okay? Maybe you've heard the term polyvagal theory, which, really it's been around for a little while, describes how different parts of the body get, signals to the brain. The vagus nerve is the largest nerve in the autonomic nervous system. It's not the largest nerve in the body. Does anyone know the largest nerve in the body as a whole? Let's see if anyone can get that. Any physiology people? Any people know about spines or nerves that start at the bottom of your spine and travel down to your feet? That starts with an S. That would be, I'll give you 3 more seconds. No one got it. I see Angela here with the wave. It's the sciatic nerve. So the sciatic nerve is the largest nerve in the body. The vagus nerve is the largest nerve in the autonomic nervous system. I saw Bree got close. Sciatic. There you go. I guess it takes a little while to type. I should give you more time because now I'm seeing 5, 6, 7 answers come in. Maybe I'll be more patient next time. You guys are on it. I'm impressed. I was a little bummed out for a sec. I was like, someone's got to get that. You guys got it. Thank you for participating. It makes it all worth it. So the autonomic nervous system is about some of the unconscious actions. So if you think about breathing or your heart beating, these are things that happen regardless of whether or not you try to deliberately or consciously do them. So the autonomic nervous system includes the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight, the sympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest. Yeah, they were on it. Liana said it. The messages were delayed. and the enteric nervous system, which links the gut. There's like tentacles. So check it out. I'll make it simple. The vagus nerve connects the back of the brain to all of the different organs, okay? So it's a bidirectional communication pathway that's part of a nervous system that allows for signals to go from the body to the brain, as well as from the brain to the body, okay? So there's different parts of this physiology. You might have seen or heard the term afferent nerves, which go toward the central nervous system or toward the brain, or efferent, which goes in the opposite direction, away from the central nervous system and creates movement per se. So there's a bidirectionality that's associated with the vagus nerve. We don't know a ton about the vagus nerve. It's a pretty new area. We know that it has a role in satiety. We know that when people are traumatized, their vagus nerve is altered. So you might have heard a term vagal tone. A lot of times when I treat people that have, bulimia nervosa, if there's PTSD, it's pretty clear that there's something off about the vagus nerve. So, breath work, yoga, sometimes chanting or humming, if you can vibrate the vagus nerve, it can improve vagal tone. It's really, really interesting. I think there's a lot more research coming. There's a lot of different therapies that people have tried. There's been research studies which try to block the vagus nerve. They've done it in animal models where you block the vagus nerve and see if they still do certain behaviors. And a lot of the evidence is mixed. In other words, if you block the vagus nerve, they have these vagus nerve blockers that they can use. Do people still overeat per se? And the evidence is pretty mixed because it's just a new area. It's hard to do a lot of this stuff with humans. Some of it's done with rodents, like I said. But the vagus nerve connects the back of the brain with the enteric nervous system, all the tentacles, all throughout the gut. So they're picking up on signals like temperatures, textures, volume. Some people like volume when they eat more than taste. Some people need the volume thing. Maybe the volume is detected by the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is picking up on all kinds of information, and we're only starting to understand it. And it's really exciting to know that we'll know more in upcoming years, so we'll be able to better treat disorders related to the gut-brain axis. So to start summarizing, and then I'll see if there's any questions, we covered 3 pathways for the gut-brain axis. The first one was the microbiome. The microbiome is responsible for converting different substrates that we consume through food, whether it be amino acids to neurotransmitters or fibers to short-chain fatty acids. There's a lot of other roles that the microbes have. And when I say microbes, I'm talking today mostly about bacteria, but there's other things involved, fungi, etc., that we're not really talking about today. The second pathway was through inflammatory mechanisms. So if there's inflammation happening at the gut through poor diet, from a low fiber diet, by the way, if you don't eat enough fiber, they've shown if someone's on a fiber-free diet, the bacteria in the gut can start eating away at your gut lining. And that can cause a degradation of your mucosal layer, which can lead to those inflammatory processes. So you definitely want to get enough fiber to keep the mucosal barrier intact and keep your microbes happy. And the third pathway was the vagus nerve, okay? And that is a large nerve, part of the autonomic nervous system, which is responsible for sending signals from the gut to the brain and back. And it's a really exciting novel pathway, which there might be some treatment strategies. In terms of recommendations, you can improve your vagal tone through yoga. That has been an evidence-based supported treatment modality. And in terms of improving gut bacteria, the best recommendation I have is lots of plant foods with polyphenols, and to minimize things like artificial sweeteners or other things that aren't necessarily gut friendly. So don't just think about calories, think about food that can actually, that would actually be well received by your gut, because it's not just some inert reservoir. That's what I always thought, it was just like this empty place. It's not, it's an organ. We're calling it the second brain. It's really, really important to take care of your gut as a way of improving your mental health. This is the future of nutritional psychiatry. Today we didn't discuss the HPA access, which I'll save for a future live in a few weeks. This was super fun for me. I just rattled off for most of the time. I see messages. I haven't seen one come in a minute, but if anyone has a question, now would be a really good time. I know there's a little bit of a lag or the delay, and that's how the internet works sometimes. I'm seeing hearts. I'm seeing the love. I'm feeling the love. I'm really glad everyone showed up. I'm getting the thank yous. I'm really happy to see so many people. I know I didn't get to shout out everyone. It's impossible for me to do that as you come in. I try to do the best that I can, but you coming here is the only reason that I'll continue to do this. So Shelby, hello, Barbara. Someone asked about how much alcohol causes gut leakiness. I think it's safe to say that, if you drink regularly, you're going to be dealing with leaky gut. I think that it's safe to say that small amounts of alcohol here and there probably can be buffered, but if you're a daily drinker, you're going to have impaired gastrointestinal, which is going to affect mental health. I see the thank yous, the Chris, the Natalie. Thank you all so much for being here. I definitely will stick around for another minute. How much chia water do you typically drink on a daily basis? About 2 tablespoons in a 16 to 20 ounce bottle of water. But you want to shake it up and let it soak for an hour. I have a question. What are the symptoms of leaky gut? How can you be tested for it? There's a test that tests for zonulin, which is a marker for leaky gut. I'm not 100% convinced that it's the best thing, but it's the best thing that we got. You can test for zonulin as a marker for leaky gut. I see someone asking about chia in the smoothie. Is that whack? That ain't whack. It's not fully Fiber Gang official. Fiber Gang is the water, but you can claim for today. Best thing to do, Liana, is to make a smoothie bowl. Make a bowl really thick. Instead of drink it, make it thick and then put the chia seeds on top. You want them to be intact, per se. Chia Gang. Sarah just joined, but we're wrapping up. This is every Friday at 4 o'clock. Typically, I'll be done by 4:30. Sometimes I go a little bit longer. Probiotic supplements on empty stomach. I would say so. I think a probiotic supplement is best first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. Soak your chia. Yes, making them real thick. Yeah, thick smoothie bowls. It's fun. You could sneak in other things that you wouldn't normally put in there. I see the love. I see the hands. Thick. We know about that. Do I recommend probiotics? Yes. I don't necessarily plan on making specific product recommendations over Instagram, but I do different products with different people. I have a couple that it's hard to get and I carry in my office, but I do often recommend probiotics. Best Instagram live. Thank you. I'm so glad everyone came. Specific strains. I might be able to send you an infographic I have. Nuts do have polyphenols. Yes, the queen is here. Indeed, she is. Angela, thank you. Smoothie bowl recipe recommendations. Whoa. I'm here to give away stuff, but I don't know. Yes, set an alarm for these lives because it's going to be every week. And I really will, the more people I get, the more effort I'll put into it. So if you can recruit some people and get the attendance to go up, I will put in more research time to disseminate more. If the attendance drops, I don't know what to say. What can you expect from the kid? You know what I mean? I see people coming, but we are wrapping up. Molly, we missed you. We are at the end. This is every Friday from 4 to 4:30. I will probably go until 4:45, but that's it for the day. Finish your dietitian documentation. Spread the love, okay? And always think of me if you have people that need nutritional support. I do virtual sessions over Zoom, FaceTime. I'm able to help people all over the world. Sometimes just one session, get a few recommendations, can change your life. And that's nutritionandrecovery.com.